and Jaden for their remarks, the very kind remarks, and thank all of you for being here. What I'd like to do is just chat for a bit, then I'll stop and try to take any questions or comments you may have. Let me begin by saying to you as a United States Senator that I am deeply embarrassed, as I think the American people are, whether they're Latino, whatever they may be, are embarrassed by having a president who is a racist, who is a xenophobe, and who thinks that he can win some votes by attacking undocumented people. The function of a president is to bring people together, whether they're black or whether they're white, whether they're Latino, whether they're Native American, whether they're Asian American, whether they're gay, straight. That is what a real president does. And it's only a phony president who tries to win political points by dividing our people up. So the first point that I want to make to you, that as President of the United States, I would see my job is to end the racism, end the demonization, and bring people together, not divide them up. And before I get into some of the other issues that I know that are on your mind, let me just say a word about immigration. As President of the United States, on my first day in office, because there are some things you can do with executive order, I will issue an executive order that once again provides legal status to the 1.8 million young people in the DACA program. Number two, we will also do, and I want everybody here to know it, this is what the American people want. Do not for a moment think that Trump's racism is what the American people believe in. Some may, but most do not. And what the American people believe is that we need comprehensive immigration reform. This is long overdue. It is decades overdue. And we've got to pass it. Not a radical idea. It's what the American people want, and that means a path toward citizenship for 11 million undocumented people. And the third thing we do is end the horrific situation at the southern border. All right, so let me be clear to you, as having met some of these folks. If a mom and a child are traveling 1,500 miles, and I just met somebody actually a few days ago in Des Moines, who had traveled with her kids from Honduras on a 6-month journey, mostly by foot, to escape the violence and the extreme poverty that existed in her community. That person is not a criminal. And that person should not be treated as a criminal when she reaches the border. So we will develop a border policy that is humane, which means that federal agents will not snatch babies from the arms of their mothers. We will not be locking children up in cages. We will not be dividing families up. We will have a rational asylum program based on international law. And let me just touch on a few of the other issues, and I know already that Danielle and Jaden have touched on them. I happen to believe that health care is a human right. And I will end the international embarrassment of the United States of America being the only major country on earth not to guarantee health care to all, and let me underline the word, all people in America. And what that means, I want to be clear about what that means. A lot of people talk a whole lot about healthcare, but I want to dig down a little bit and tell you what it means to me. It means to me not that just that people have insurance. That doesn't mean anything if you have a bad insurance policy. Right. If you have a high deductible, am I right? Yeah. Or if you have a high copayment, if you can't afford prescription drugs. So you may be insured, but it doesn't mean anything because you can't get to the doctor when you need to get to the doctor. So what I mean by a rational healthcare system, is what exists in many other countries on earth. It exists 50 miles away from me. I live in northern Vermont, 50 miles away from the Canadian border. And you know what they got now? You go to the doctor anytime you want. You know how much it costs you? Zero. You don't take out your wallet. You don't take out your credit card. You end up in the hospital with a serious surgery. You're there for a month. Do you know how much it costs you when you leave? Zero. That is what a humane, civilized healthcare system is about. It says to everybody, you're poor, you're middle class, you're working class, you're rich, whatever you may be, you are entitled to high quality healthcare because you are a human being. And what that system means, and you know, we're taking on the whole healthcare industry in order to pass Medicare for all. And they're going to lie a lot. They're going to put a lot of ads on television. And my opponents will be saying things that are not accurate. So let me tell you what it means. It means no more premiums. Not for you, not for your employer. It means no more copayments, no more out-of-pocket expenses. It is funded out of the general tax base in a progressive way, which means the very, very wealthy will be paying a lot more. Middle class will be paying much less than they are paying now after we get rid of premiums, co-payments, and out-of-pocket expenses. We are now spending twice as much per person on health care as do the people of any other country. 1 out of 5 Americans cannot afford the prescription drugs they need. Under Medicare for All, my plan, nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for all the prescription drugs they need. How's that? And we will also cover dental care. We'll cover hearing aids. We'll cover eyeglasses and home health care as well. And what we will be doing is not only ending the $100 billion in profit that the healthcare industry made last year, but the many hundreds of billions of dollars in administrative waste that the current system incurs because we have hundreds and hundreds of separate plans out there that have to be administered. You have a $5,000 deductible, you have a $10,000 deductible, you're in this network, you're in that network, you have this copayment, you got that copayment, and on it goes. It is an impossibly complex system to administer. We waste many hundreds of billions. That's gone. Everybody goes to any doctor they want. You don't have to fill out a million forms. You don't have to argue with the insurance companies. So that's what we're going to do on healthcare. And by the way, I've been criticized for this, so let me say it here again. My healthcare plan covers everybody, including the undocumented. In terms of education, what we are proposing is a tripling of funding for Title I low-income schools. What we are proposing is, over a period of time, short period of time, to make sure that every teacher in America earns at least $60,000 a year, because we respect educators. What we are also going to do is make public colleges and universities tuition free and cancel all student debt. Every young person in this country, regardless of his or her income, has the right to get a higher education. Maybe it's college, maybe it's a trade school. Maybe you want to be a sheet metal worker, maybe you want to be a plumber or a carpenter. Those are good jobs. But you need the training to get it, and we will make sure you get that training. Now people say, and my critics say, they say, well, Bernie, these are great ideas, but they're very expensive. How are you going to pay for them? Well, if I remember correctly, people didn't worry about how we were going to pay to bail out the crooks on Wall Street 11 years ago. And we gave them trillions of dollars of zero-interest loans. People didn't worry how we're going to pay in order to give over $1 trillion in tax breaks to the 1% under Trump and to large profitable corporations. People don't worry about how you're going to pay for that. But we pay for our proposal. We impose a modest tax on Wall Street speculation, which will pay to make public colleges and universities tuition-free, cancel all student debt in America. 4 years ago, when I came to Iowa, I said you got to raise the minimum wage to a $15 minimum wage. And everybody thought it was a radical idea. Not so radical anymore. 7 states in the U.S. Congress have voted for $15 an hour minimum wage legislation. And we're going to do that all over the country. Just a few days ago, I was in Des Moines, and I spoke to a woman who has 3 kids trying to raise her family on $10 an hour. You know what? Nobody can raise a family on $10 an hour. You can't do it for one person, let alone for 3 kids. And that's why we have to have a living wage in this country. That is why we have to make it easier for workers to join unions. Thank you, Teamster Brother. Okay. All right, and that is why we also need equal pay, women, equal pay for equal work. The other issue I just want to touch on, which is really not just an issue for the United States, it's an issue for the whole world. Donald Trump, our genius president, see, and if you ask him, he will tell you he's a genius. He's a very humble man. And he's, I think the word was a stable genius. Wow. Okay. Well, our stable genius president thinks that climate change is a hoax. Now, I myself think Donald Trump is a hoax. But what I do know is that what the scientists tell us is that climate change is very, very real, okay? And that it is only going to get worse in the years and decades to come unless we are not addressing this issue in a very aggressive way. All of you can see what's going on with your eyes. You saw what happened in Puerto Rico a couple of years ago. You saw what happened in the Bahamas a couple of weeks ago. You saw what happened in Texas with unprecedented levels of flooding a few days ago. You all remember what happened to New Orleans in terms of Hurricane Katrina. You remember what happened to New Jersey, parts of New York, in terms of Hurricane Sandy. Right now, as we speak, there is a terrible forest fire going on in Bolivia because of the drought right there. Europe just had the worst heat wave this last month that they have ever had in their history. Terrible drought in Australia, in India, in Pakistan, in Cape Town, South Africa. They were very close to being in a situation where in a very large city in South Africa, they were going to turn on their water faucets and water would not come out. So we are facing a terrible global crisis. And I'm proud to tell you that I have introduced the most comprehensive climate change legislation ever introduced by any presidential candidate in the history of this country. And by the way, As we move away from fossil fuel into energy efficiency and sustainable energy, we create up to 20 million good-paying jobs. And in our proposal, for those workers who might lose their jobs, and there will be some, as we move away from fossil fuel, we have provided the most extensive protection that any workers in this country have ever received. 5 years of pay, health care, educational opportunities. So we're not going to turn our backs on those workers. They got families they have to take care of. They are not our enemy. Our enemy is climate change. One more issue here I don't want to touch, then we'll just open it up. We have a criminal justice system in this country which is not only deeply broken, but it is racist as well, and that's just a fact. We have more people in jail in the United States of America than any other country on earth, including China, which is 4 times our size. Okay, so number one, what do? I will present a budget to Congress which focuses on making sure that our young people get the education and the job training that they need. Too many kids in this country are slipping through the cracks. They are dropping out of high school. They're hanging out on the streets. They don't have the education. They don't have the training to go out and get decent paying jobs. And when that happens, those kids will get into trouble. We as a nation will not allow those kids to slip through the cracks. They will get the education, they will stay in school, they will get the job training so they can go out and earn a good living. That's number one. Number two, instead of investing in more jails, we ain't gonna invest in more jails, and we're not gonna invest in more incarceration. What we're also gonna do is make it easier for people who are in jail right now to get decent jobs and housing and income when they leave jail. I remember talking to 2 gentlemen who both had been in prison. And one guy said, you know what happened? One day somebody came into my cell and they said, hey, congratulations, you're getting out of jail tomorrow. Here's a check for $75. Good luck. To nobody's surprise, he ended up back in jail. He's now gotten his act together and he's doing very well. All right, people, when they leave jail, need to be reintegrated into community, decent housing, decent jobs, decent education, so they don't fall back into the same environment they got in there in the first place. Furthermore, what we have got to do is end private prisons in America. Corporations should not be making money by imprisoning human beings, okay? We are going to end cash bail in this country. You all know what that's about? You all know what cash bail is about? What cash bail means is that if somebody gets arrested, not found guilty, you get arrested, and you get put into jail, if you don't have the $500 or the $1,000 that you need for bail, guess what? You stay in jail. So yeah, I know, that's a surprise. There are 400,000 people in jail right now. Did you know that? I know, a lot of people don't know that, who have not been convicted of anything. They were arrested. Maybe they're guilty, maybe they're not. They were arrested, put in jail, and unlike wealthier people, they can't come up with the $500 or the $1,000 to post bail, and they stay in jail. And then they often do a plea bargain, which is something that they didn't even do, and they got a criminal record. All right, it is a very archaic and reactionary system which we intend to end. And the other thing, 4 years ago when I was here in Iowa, I talked about ending the war on drugs. Now, I have been astounded So I go around the country, and I go all over the country. And I ask people, maybe I'll ask you, you don't have to raise your hand if you don't want to, but I ask people, how many of you know anybody who was arrested for possession of marijuana? There you go. All right, look at that, right here in this room. Okay. And, you know, depending on the state you're in, different things happen. But there are people who actually end up in jail for possession of marijuana. Meanwhile, if you go to Nevada, where marijuana is legal, there are these big signs that tell you which store you should go to. You know, they're advertising. These corporations are advertising, buy marijuana at Joe's store, whatever it may be. So I think it's hard to imagine that you got people in jail today for doing exactly what large corporations are doing and making money out of. And that is why we're going to expunge the records of people who were arrested for possession of marijuana. But our bottom line here is to have a criminal justice system which protects the American people from people who would do them harm. But we're no longer going to be arresting people the way we have in the past. Our job is to make sure that people have the jobs and the education to lead good lives, to become taxpayers in this country, and not to rot in a jail cell. And we can do that. All right, let me, I've gone on probably longer than I wanted to, and most of you, I'm here today to hear what's on your mind. Ask me any question you want, or tell me what's on your mind. Tell me what your concerns are. Tell me what you would like a president of the United States to do. Okay, I think Misty, we got a mic? Is that it? The one mic we got? All right, we have one mic, and Misty is our woman right here. Misty, just stand up, give us your name. And
Hi, Senator Sanders. My name is Francie Williamson. I'm from Muscatine. I want to ask you about Russia, because I'm curious about what you feel we should do to deter them in the next election, and as well as other countries, China,
yes,
North Korea, Iran, and what you would do as president to deal with Putin and the oligarchy that has taken over that country.
Okay. Well, guess what? We got an oligarchy that's taken over the United States as well. You know, I was just talking to some union people earlier today. We did an event talking about the need to make it easier for workers to join unions. And earlier we were talking, and a woman said exactly what you said. It's hard to believe that in America now, people are nervous about whether their vote will actually be counted, whether the election will be a clean election. And clearly you have in Putin somebody who, like his good friend Donald Trump, is not a great believer in democracy. And what Putin is trying to do is destabilize democracies, not only in the United States, but all over the world. All right. The House passed something, I don't think it went as far as it might, but the U.S. House passed something to begin to protect our election system, to protect our voting lists, our ballot boxes, our machines from this type of interference. So we've got to do everything that we can. You know, I'm kind of old-fashioned. You want to hear what I believe? I believe that we maybe, at the very least, you want a paper trail. Okay, in my city, where I used to be the mayor, what you do is use a machine, but it's basically a paper ballot. All right, and you got it, you keep it there. And I'm not sure that that's not a bad idea for the whole country. That you need a paper backup so that there can't be digital manipulation. Okay, so your vote can't be wiped out. So I think it's kind of funny that we're going back to that, but it may be the best thing, just put an X next to the candidate you like. But we have got to make it clear to Putin and to other countries that it is a very, very, very serious act to be tampering with our democracy. It's something I take very seriously. Okay, my team's the friend back there.
Thank you very much for calling on me, and welcome back to West Liberty. And I'm just here because I know you spoke earlier with labor.
Yes.
But we want to actually know what a future President Sanders would do to actually keep our union pensions solvent?
Wonderful question.
Thank you.
I'm going to answer that question. I'm going to answer another question that you didn't ask. Should have asked the other question too. All right. Some of you may know that a number of years ago, against my vote, in the middle of the night, as part of a large bill, an agreement was reached, which is horrific. And what it did is in terms of the multi-employer pension program, what it did is it said that created a situation where workers could receive 30, 40, 50% of what they were promised in terms of their pensions. Now, to my mind, that is unspeakable, and I'll tell you why. If you're involved in a labor negotiation, maybe you get what you want, maybe you don't. But you know what the game is, right?
Exactly.
We have workers here in the Midwest and elsewhere who have worked for 20, 30, 40 years. They've given up wage increases. They've given up health care benefits in order to protect their pensions. What they said is, look, someday I'm going to be 65. I can't work. I want to make sure that I have a decent retirement. That was the right thing for them to do. That's what they did. And then, suddenly, in the middle of the night, a decision is made that says, hey, that pension you thought you had has been cut in half. That is unspeakable, because it undermines any faith that anybody may have in the whole damn system. How do you trust anybody when after you sacrifice for 30 years, the rug is pulled out underneath you and your pension is cut by whatever, 50, 60%. Truth is, it is not a very, very expensive problem to solve, not for the federal government. I think it's a $32 billion problem. We will restore the necessary funding. Every worker who was entitled to a pension will get 100 cents on the dollar for what he or she was entitled to. The question I thought you were going to ask,
All right.
are you ready? Next time you ask me this one, is what do we do to make it easier for workers to join unions?
Yeah.
See, right now, if you're in the Teamsters or you're in whatever union, machinists or the UAW, everything being equal, you're going to make a lot higher wages and have better benefits than non-union workers. And that's why employers hate unions and try to do everything they can to prevent workers from joining unions. We have introduced very far-reaching labor law reform, which says right now that if 50% of the workers in a bargaining unit plus one sign a card to join a union, they have a union end-up discussion. And I think there are millions of workers in this country who want to join unions. I think they are stopped by the illegal opposition of employers, and we're going to put an end to that. My hope is that we could double union membership in 4 years, which is not, I think, unrealistic, because there are millions of workers who want to join unions. But right now, by employer action, they're prevented from doing that.
Card check would do it.
That is exactly what we have in mind. If 50% plus one sign a card, you got a union. How's that? And if the employer doesn't negotiate a first contract, severe penalties on that employer. Our bill also does away with the so-called right to work laws that exist. Okay, what else is on your mind? Gentleman way in the back.
Hi Bernie, my name is Daniel Clark. I'm from Mount Pleasant. I was actually one of your national delegates in 2016, and I was proud to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you. My question is, since it seems like it's going to be kind of the way that it was last time, where the field seems a little skewed against you, are you willing to take this to a contested convention again?
Well, we're going to do, we're in this race to win it. I want to say a few words about the campaign. I think we're going to win because at the end of the day, what wins elections, especially in rural states like Iowa, or in Vermont for that matter, are not 30-second TV ads. We're going to have those ads, and not radio ads, and not newspaper advertisements. All of those things are important, and we're going to do it. But you know what the most important thing is? The most important thing is person-to-person contact. All right? It is everybody here reaching out to 5 other people and explaining to them the importance of the election and why you think I should win this election. And right now we have here in Iowa an incredible grassroots support from one end of the state to the other. So we are in it to win it here. Now, having said that, you understand that what makes our campaign different from all of the rest is we are taking on the entire establishment. So we're taking on Trump and the Republican establishment, that goes without saying. We're taking on the Democratic establishment. We're taking on Wall Street and the insurance companies already advertising in this state. You see their ads? Okay, and Medicare for all is terrible, and for next time it'll be Bernie Sanders is awful. And that's what you can do when you make $100 billion in profit. Okay, we're taking on the fossil fuel industry, and we're taking on the prison industrial complex, so we're taking on the military industrial complex. So what we are trying to do uniquely in this campaign is not just defeat Donald Trump, that is enormously important, but we're also trying to transform this country and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%. And what the challenge is, we just announced yesterday, time flies, a tax on wealth. And I was asked, and it's the short, I was asked by the reporter, and he said, do you believe that we should have billionaires in this country? And I said, what I do believe is that it is unacceptable to me that 3 multi-billionaires own more wealth than the bottom half of America. Anybody think that's right? No. So right now, we're not in a position to do away with all billionaires, but you know what? By the time I'm through with them, they're going to have significantly less money than they have today. And we're going to use that money. I'll tell you what we're going to do. This is not just taxing for the sake of taxing. We're going to use that money to help us create universal, affordable child care. We're going to use that money to start building the millions of low-income and affordable housing units that this country needs. And some of that money will go to pay for Medicare for all. So what we're saying is that instead of a handful of billionaires controlling hundreds and hundreds of billions of dollars in personal wealth, we are going to take some of that wealth, build the housing this country needs, the child care that it needs, the health care that it needs. And if anyone wants to criticize me for that, go for it. That is what my view is. That is what I believe. Okay. We've got a plane to catch. Any, ma'am? Okay, a few more questions. Ma'am? Uh-oh, you're going to read from okay. I always get nervous. People go, it's an 18-page question. Okay.
I'm wondering if you'd speak for a little bit on the Institute and funding for the Institute of Museum and Library Services. Currently, in the state of Iowa, the code only mandates 6 cents for every 1,000 tax dollars collected to go back to those institutions that are supporting families, that are supporting the primary and secondary education. Could you speak a little bit about your plans for that?
Sure. Look, what our job is to fundamentally change the value system and the priorities that currently exist in this country. Trump and his friends believe that we should give massive tax breaks for billionaires. They believe that we should heavily subsidize the fossil fuel industry. They believe that we should then cut Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, education, environmental protection. Those are their priorities. My priorities are exactly the opposite. Right? And my priorities, when we talk about the importance of education, we're talking about great libraries as well. Great libraries. Modern libraries. where people from the community can come in and utilize those libraries, not only for books or for audiovisual material or videos or whatever it may be, but as meeting rooms where you have cultural activities. I'm a big believer in expanding cultural activities in this country. And we want to make sure that people have the opportunity to listen to great music and art. So, you know, when I was mayor of Burlington, we started a council on the arts, which was enormously successful, still going on today. Concerts, the whole schmear. So count me in as a strong supporter. Yes, sir.
First of all, I want to congratulate you for 2000. I want to congratulate you for 2016 campaign. You had a wonderful campaign, and you fired up all those young kids in college and high school kids, and it was just amazing to see all those young people very excited. And it was disappointing seeing you losing to Hillary. And one of the questions is how you going to come back and win against the Democrat establishment,
Machine?
the machine. How you going to do that? That's one question. Another thing, I knew you were coming here, and I was very excited to and I would like to shake your hand, and it's amazing to see. And the reason why I'm so excited is because I knew you were coming, and I got that the time to check a little bit about where you've been, how you got here, and seeing that couple of books that were interesting to me, Revolution, American Revolution, and anyway, it was like go back in my past. I grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and I went to the law school. The reason why, because my mother was put in jail unjustly. So, and I was only like maybe 11. So I decided law school would be the way. I went to law school, and I actually got to be I worked as a lawyer down in Mexico, and I help a lot of people. That was my heart, to help people because of the injustice. But anyway, how are you going to prevail with the injustice?
I will tell you how. Thank you very much, and thank you for the work. Thank you for your kind words, and thank you for what you've done. Look, very often, I'm asked by somebody in the media, and they say, well, what motivates you? I mean, how'd you come to the views that you have? And I'll tell you how. My father was an immigrant, okay? I'm the son of an immigrant, and that's why I will not accept for one moment the demonization of the immigrant community. My family as well. And number two, I grew up in a working class family. I lived in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York, 3.5 rooms. And my mother's dream was to own her own house. But she died young and she never achieved that dream. So I grew up in a family that lived paycheck to paycheck, okay? And living in a family, as all of you know, when you don't have a lot of money, there is a lot of stress in the family. What mothers have to make decisions. Do you buy food? Do you put gas in the car to get to work? How do you keep the electricity from getting shut off, right? Those are decisions that people have to make. I know about those decisions, okay? So what has motivated me is growing up in a family that suffered unnecessarily because of lack of money, and knowing that millions of other people are in that same boat. And I intend to work with you and the people in this room to create a much more just society. And here is the point. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. That's where you're living in right now. But it is absurd that so few have so much and so many have so little. It is absurd. It is absurd and a disgrace and immoral, if I may use that word, that when you have people worth $150 billion in this country, you got 500,000 people sleeping out on the streets tonight. Your kids who can't afford to go to college. You got people paying 50% of their limited incomes in housing. You got older people who are trying to make it on $12,000, $13,000 a year. You got people in this room who cannot afford the prescription drugs they need. All right? And that's what this campaign is about. And what makes it unique, we are waging a political revolution, a nonviolent revolution in the tradition of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And that means what we are prepared to do is to take on Wall Street and all of their greed. And we're going to break up those huge banks. We are going to take on the insurance companies and move to Medicare for all. We're going to take on the drug companies and substantially lower the cost of drugs. We're going to take on the fossil fuel industry and move to energy efficiency and sustainable energy. We're going to eliminate private prisons in America. We're going to lower military spending in this country and use that for human needs. All right? But as you can imagine, when you do that, you make a lot of enemies, right? People on top are not all, which is what this gentleman's question is. People on top are not all that happy. Leadership of the Democratic Party is not all that happy. But my job is to represent the working families of this country. And we're going to march to victory with your help. And the one thing I want to end on this note. What you have right now in Washington is by and large a Congress that works for a Republican Senate, I should say, that works very hard for the wealthy and the powerful. And the only way we create a government and an economy that works for all people is when we get people involved in the political process who have not been involved before. And I'm talking to the young people, okay? We're seeing more young people voting, but still not enough, okay? So what we have got to do is reach out. We got to register a whole lot of people to vote. We got to make sure they get to the polling booths. And when we do that together, we're not only going to defeat the most dangerous president in the history of this country, we're going to transform the United States. Thank you all very much.